Serious. Redditors who have lived in a haunted house. What are your most unexplainable paranormal experiences? In 2012, my stepfather overdosed on heroin and dropped dead in the hallway in his condo apartment. My mom had to move out shortly after since they were already behind on mortgage bills. A few months later, my lease went up and I was barely making ends meet and couldn't find new roommates. My mom offered me the key to the condo apartment to squat for a few months until I saved up enough for my own apartment. I took the offer and moved into the condo apartment. After a month or so, I was asleep in the living room and I had this dream of him standing in the hallway facing the living room. He was looking at me and smiling/laughing. Even made a stupid joke and everything. It wasn't disturbing at all, just bittersweet. Then I suddenly woke when I felt some pressure stroking down my head and back. There was nothing around me, and it tripped me the hell out. As a skeptical person that doesn't believe in the paranormal, it has to be some kind of sensory hallucination. It was still nice to see him in my dream once again, though. Made me tear up typing this. R.I.P. Darren. Moved from the US to the UK, and our parents bought an old beat-up house. It still had lead pipes for water. Nightmare all on its own. Anyway, work proceeded on the house whilst we lived there. We started seeing bright lights in the corners of rooms at night. Footsteps on floorboards. The house had carpet. I was about 6 at the time and started getting woken up in the middle of the night by a little girl who would dance on my chest of drawers for me. I was frickin' terrified. My mum just fobbed it off as me dreaming. Workmen complained of strange things happening, like tools being moved and odd feelings like being watched. After about a year of this, my eldest sister's friend stayed overnight. She woke the whole house up screaming, saying a little girl had been in her room. She had apparently pulled her from the bed. The friend left the house and refused to ever come back. Mum decided she might need to do something about it and got some advice. He suggested my mum and the whole family should treat the presence as part of the family. So when we got home, we shout, "Hi, we're home. Did you have a good day?" Over time, the house settled, and we didn't get any more trouble. We also found out a little girl did die in the house of asthma. My parents still live there, and it's a beautiful, homely place now. I lived in a house that seemed to be haunted by doppelgangers. Every event that happened never involved some mysterious figure, but a known person being in a place where they should not have been. Here are a few examples. I was a teenager at the time, and I was instant messaging my girlfriend at the time with my webcam turned on. I had the viewer up so that I could see myself in the webcam. Behind me, there was the stairs leading up left of the camera view and the entrance to the living room right of the camera view. My younger sister would typically fall asleep every night on the couch in front of the TV and make her way up to bed in the middle of the night. At one point in my webcam view, I saw my sister leave the living room and go up the stairs. The thing that struck me as odd was that I didn't hear anything. It was an older Victorian house, so the wooden floor and stairs were loud AF. Without saying anything to my girlfriend, I got up and looked into the living room, and there was my sister passed out on the couch. I sat back down and asked my girlfriend if she'd seen anything in my camera. She said, "Yeah, I just saw your sister go upstairs." My family was all getting ready to go somewhere. I was sitting in the car with my mom, and we were waiting on my sister who was still in the house. After a bit, she comes out and gets in the car and just looks at me like, WTF. I ask her what's wrong, and she says that just before she walked out of the house, she thought I was still inside, so she yelled up the stairs, "Obvious, we're leaving," and apparently I yelled back, "Okay, I'll be down in a minute." My mom woke up to someone tapping her foot, and she said someone was standing at the end of her bed who faded out after a couple of seconds. She said it looked like me. I had an encounter where I woke up and felt like someone was under my covers laying up against me. When I said something, my blanket visibly deflated and I no longer felt anything. I include this with the doppelgangers because though I didn't see what I felt under the blanket, it laid like my girlfriend would lay against me. When I was 22, I was in the military, and I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. It still took like a year after the diagnosis to separate from the military, but I went home on leave for the holidays about a month after the diagnosis. Anyone that has insulin-dependent diabetes typically carries around some sort of kit. Mine is black zip-up pouch, and it has a glucometer, insulin pen, needles, and alcohol pads. Right after I left home to head back from leave, my mom texts me to ask if I'm missing my diabetic kit. I look, and I'm not. She sends me a picture of a diabetic kit and asks if I know it. I've never seen this kit before in my life. Apparently my sister went into her bedroom and discovered it outside of her window, propped up like someone had set it there. Oh, also, her bedroom is on the second floor. Nobody else we know has diabetes. A lady who had 2 husbands die on her in the same house. That's the house my dad decides to buy. The first one hung himself from the rafters in the garage, and the second one fell ill and died in his bed in the basement. I lived in the basement room and often just felt like I was being watched all the time. The bedroom in the basement has a secret storage room behind a bookshelf with a locking latch. I would always wake up to find the door wide open. It happened so often that I would wake up and cold routinely go shut and lock the latch of the door in the middle of the night. For the longest time, I thought it was my dad or stepbrothers messing with me, but it wasn't. My stepbrother now occupies that room, and he says it still happens to him, and that he's even seen it open on its own. There are no air vents or anything, so I've ruled out wind. Also, in the garage, I always see light coming from under the door through the crack, only to open the door to pitch black. I've heard sounds coming from the garage, only to find saw blades clanging together and slightly rotating in their place on the whole storage wall. Didn't think anything of it at first, but when you find shit moving on more than one occasion, it makes you look over your shoulder at the rafters and wonder. When I was around 9 to 10 years old, I remember waking up to see a large shadow standing at the foot of my bed. I was living with my dad at the time. He has a very large, 5 floors, terrace house built in the 1800s. Every so often, there would be an unexplainable event happen, such as footsteps when there's no one there or voices. On the night this happened, it was just my dad and I in the house. My sister was staying with my mom at the time. I woke up and noticed the door to my room was wide open. I normally sleep with it closed. I then became aware of a large, around 7 feet tall, shadow-like figure watching me from the end of the bed. When the figure noticed me, it seemed to melt into the floor, and the door to my room slammed shut. Understandably, I was slightly traumatized by this whole experience. Asked my dad the next day if he was in my room, and he denied any knowledge of the event. He's not the type of person that likes jokes. My uncle's house, out on a very eastern part of New York, was said to be haunted due to the family that used to own it in the 1800s decided not to give it to the stableman and sold it instead. He and the maid were said to have haunted the place. We also used to joke that you would hear people or things moving at night, but since the house is so old, we used to just laugh it off. My uncle's friend had her and her sister stay over the house one night, and the friend noticed a maid bringing towels down the stairs when she woke. She saw the maid again bringing what looked like a percolator down the stairs. She was so impressed by my uncle hiring staff. He is a neurologist in New York City, so he had a habit of spending a little bit extra. She went back to bed and woke up later downstairs to see my uncle and his friend just chatting. She asked where the maid went, and she thought that the maid was cooking breakfast. My uncle had no idea what she was talking about and asked what she looked like. The sister explained and he laughed. Walked her to the living room and pointed to an old picture. She said that was the woman. My uncle replied, "Yeah, she's been dead for about 100 years. So I used to live in a big house, 6 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, basement, etc., by myself. I was there as a hiring perk. and to look after the place for my boss who lived out of state but owned the home. One of those win-win situations. The first couple of months there were fine, but when winter came, I started hearing things coming from the second floor. I lived pretty much exclusively on the first floor. It started with little bumps and bangs coming from above where I had my computer set up, and progressed to distinct footsteps coming and going across the second floor. I had been up to the second floor to check up on it from time to time, and I knew that there were unfinished areas up there. One place always stuck out, an unfinished room that was a sort of walk-in closet for one of the upstairs bedrooms. It was attached to the garage attic, complete, unlit. It was open when I went up to investigate the noises. I shut the door and locked it. 2 nights later, more noises. Footsteps leading from unfinished room to the bathroom, then nothing. The worst part, the door. The door that led to the unfinished room would not stay closed or locked. I tried everything. Eventually, I pushed the bed up against the door to keep it from opening. That seemed to work. A few months went by without the door coming open, but I would find it unlocked all the time. As time passed, I would hear noises all over the house, mostly footsteps, but the occasional thump with no explanation. I cannot explain how horrifying it is to hear little taps up and down the hall from the other side of a bathroom door during your morning shower. I eventually moved out, but another employee moved in to take my place. His stay there only lasted about a month. The story he told me is that he was shaving one morning before work and he heard a slam like someone dropped a heavy stack of books right outside his bedroom door, then heavy footsteps like someone running down the hall. He won't stay there anymore, and no one in the company will live in that house. I lived in an old haunted house in college. Things got so weird that everyone moved out except for me and one roommate. Here's a few. I woke up at 3 a.m. because my roommate's door kept opening and slamming shut. From bed, I yelled for him to stop, only to realize I was the only one home that weekend. As soon as I yelled, the slamming stopped. But the hippie beads I had hanging outside my closed door began to sway perfectly, yet violently, against the doorframe for a half hour. While I debated if I should pop out my air conditioning unit and jump out of the window, I laid in the fetal position in bed till it stopped. I woke up at 3 a.m. alone again, hearing the Nintendo in the back porch playing loudly. I figured a drunk kid came in and started playing. I grabbed a bat and walked towards the back of the house, and the music got louder and louder. As soon as I opened the door, it was completely quiet. Mind you, it was loud enough to wake me up. I had friends over and told them the house was haunted. No one believed me, so I asked the ghost to do anything to prove it was there. As soon as I asked, all the lights in the house began flickering for about a minute straight. This was the middle of the day. Everyone witnessed it. Almost everyone who stayed at my house had sleep paralysis at least once in the house. Every time something spooky happened, the house would smell like old lady, flowery, strong perfume. This house had a door built into the flooring that led to the basement. We always had a rug covering it up, so no one knew it was there. Things would constantly go missing in the house and turning up in the basement. The house had a coal chute from when it was heated by coal back in the day. Missing stuff would always be placed on the chute for us to come and get. Roommate had some issues. Once while playing video games late at night, he saw mist kind of hovering from the kitchen, then move into the bathroom. The bathroom had a trap door that led to the attic. That's where we figured the old lady ghost used to like to hang out. Roommate was up late. He went to go lock the doors and turn off the lights. When he turned his back on the room and walked to the door, someone breathed into his ear. He thought it was me. I was sleeping. He turned around, pissed himself, and ran to his room. He was too afraid to come out and turn off the lights and TV. Loud thumps in attic at all hours. For peace of mind, we told ourselves squirrels must have gotten in there. Voices would wake us up in the middle of the night. I spent many mornings on the front porch waiting for the sun to come up before I went back in the house. Coincidentally, I had a friend years later that rented from the same landlord, same town, different house, where he and all of his roommates moved out because that house was also haunted. I didn't think it was too weird until he was telling me that when all of the weird stuff happened, it was accompanied by old lady flowery stanky perfume. Also, a lot of people had sleep paralysis in that house as well.